Dynasty fantasy football owners, week 4 of the NFL is in the books, and we know that you have questions on how panicked you should be about certain players that might not be performing like you expected. We're here to answer those questions. And if you have any players that you are panicked about and you want to know our panic level, comment them below so we can answer you. All right, fellas, we have a panic meter for the following players after week 4. Steve, we'll start with you. Our first player here is quarterback Aaron Rodgers. What's your panic meter?
I am panicked about Aaron Rodgers. I would say I'm at around a 7. Not all the way up there because I expected, especially with the departure of Devontae Adams, that this offense would look a lot different. So it has been slow moving. Rodgers himself even came out and said, as far as their winning ways, that he doesn't believe that this is sustainable. I don't either. It looks like he's making a connection with Romeo Doubs. Christian Watson is not looking like a great pick for them. He's not been very involved in the offense, hasn't had a connection with Rodgers. So I think overall, if you were hoping that he was going to be a player that helped you win your league this year, I don't think it's going to happen. He's older. So I'm panicked about him. I'm not all the way up to a 10 plus, just because I kind of expected this. I hedged my bets here, but we'll see going forward.
I'm going to just start with one thing for you, Steve. RELAX. I would just say I'm not as concerned on Rodgers. I would say maybe 5 or 6 on the panic meter. I know he hasn't been good. I know it hasn't looked good. But like you said, we kind of expected this. I think as the season goes on, he's going to get more of a connection with those rookie guys. Just going through a little bit of trouble right now. Just trying to see where guys kind of fit in. But I'm not as worried. I think he could kind of start to turn it around mid-season here, or even after like they have a bye and just kind of start to figure things out. But I would be okay with Rodgers going forward though.
All right, our next player. Are you panicked about running back Jonathan Taylor?
Now, this is a big name, and this is the perfect player that you should be targeting in your leagues. In my opinion, my panic level is around a 4. He had a slow start. Last year, he had his electric year. If you look at last year, he started slow last year, and over time, he built up that momentum. It is concerning that Matt Ryan, his age is definitely showing. That team is not as efficient and as effective as I thought they would be. But I think it's too early to panic on him. And in a dynasty league, if somebody is, this would be a great opportunity to try to see if you can't acquire him. Because I think at the end of the day, his talent is undeniable. And I think his volume alone, he gets a ton of volume. Running backs, just fantasy players in general, aren't assured that level of volume. So that volume alone makes me interested in him. So I'm not panicking on Jonathan Taylor at this point.
Yeah, I agree, Steve. I'm not panicking on Jonathan Taylor either. I think, like you said, right around the 4 is probably appropriate there. Maybe one thing that was concerning is this, injuries battling through. But other than that, like you mentioned, with the aging Matt Ryan, this guy should be getting way more carries and way more touches. And why they aren't just dumping down the ball to him or even trying to use the screen game, because their offensive line's been horrible as well. I mean, Ryan's taking a beating back there. The way to help slow that down is running game, screens, things like that. I'd say as long as, the injury doesn't hold him back too much. But yeah, definitely if somebody is panicking, I'd buy him, try to get him right now.
All right, our next player. Are you panicked about wide receiver Gabe Davis?
Gabe Davis was talked about ad nauseum, it seemed like, as in the fantasy community this offseason. They really expected him to take that next leap in development and really be a star. I would say my panic level is at a 3. It's very low. He had that ankle injury. He's trying to get back involved in the offense. Allen is notorious for finding him. Just think that you'll see it happen, and this is where you'll really regret moving away from him, because I think in the next few weeks you'll see why people wanted him so badly. So I wouldn't be concerned about that game in Baltimore. The weather, was not the greatest. I think he's going to get back on track. I'm not concerned.
Yeah, I agree with you, Steve. I mean, I think reason people are concerned is all the hype that he had coming in preseason and the off season. But yeah, I think I agree with the level 3 there. I'm not concerned with Gabe Davis either. I really see him kind of turning things around. Like you said, I think the injury did kind of hurt him, set him back with his involvement in the offense. Crowder just got hurt. I mean, that's going to help open things up as well. I mean, whether that's, maybe guys like Khalil Shakir, but I mean, Bill's got to find a way to use this guy. He's far too talented to not get utilized in this offense.
You know, it's interesting. I just was thinking about this. If you were to do like the all hype team, for based on everything we've heard over the offseason before the draft, it's complete dud. I mean, think about it. Trey Lance out for the year, Javonte out for the year, Allen Robinson. I'm way more panicked on Allen Robinson than I am Gabe Davis. Then you got Gabe Davis and you got Kyle Pitts. That was like the all hype team, and they've all just been horrible. It's just so interesting.
Speaking of Kyle Pitts, we have probably our most recurring player on our show, tight end Kyle Pitts. Are you panicked?
Well, I have quite the amount of shares of Mr. Pitts, and I'm really restraining myself, and I'm thinking my panic level is at a 7 or a 6. I am panicked that he isn't involved. I'm more panicked about Arthur Smith. That's who I'm panicked about. That seat is hot, and I think people will riot if he continues to not be involved in an offense. So I think he is just too talented of a player to not get involved and have these games. Maybe I'm wrong, but he's the type of player that, man, if you sell him and he ends up turning it around, you're going to be kicking yourself big time. So my panic level is still moderate.
Yeah, I agree, Steve. I mean, I'm not ready for full-on panic and, panicking in the streets at like a level 10. I mean, I think 7's probably appropriate. My concern isn't necessarily with Arthur Smith. It's more so Marcus Mariota and his inability to get him the ball. I mean, I've seen them take several deep shots to him down the field, and every time the ball is like 5 yards beyond him every time. I just don't understand. But I mean, they're trying to get him down the field targets, but I don't know why they're not just doing more underneath stuff. It's kind of how they've been using Drake London almost. But I think that eventually they got to figure it out. Like you said, this guy's far too talented to keep giving you fantasy duds.
Well, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Desmond Ridder. I mean, Desmond Ridder looked really good in the preseason. This was the first game. I didn't watch the game extensively, but this was the first game where, based on the reaction I saw, people were like calling for Mariota to sit because he looked really bad. I mean, they ran it like 14 straight times, I think, at one point, because it just like after Mariota threw the pick, Arthur Smith like basically put him in the penalty box. So it's quite interesting.
All right, our last player, since we are an IDP league, we got to throw a defensive player in there. This is linebacker Isaiah Simmons. Are we panicked?
Okay. This is my first 10. I am extremely panicked on Isaiah Simmons. Wow. I drafted this man in the first round a few years ago, and boy, that was one of the worst picks. I traded up to get him. I thought he was going to be this chess piece, this electric piece, but I mean, he got burned by Travis Kelce week 1, and since then, even his snap counts have not been very high. He's just not performed well, and I have some serious concerns that if you invested in him like I did, thankfully I traded him, back when I did, even though I didn't, it was a much depreciated value. But I think unless he needs a new change of scenery, and even then, I don't know if even then he'll become something. So I think I'm completely out on him. I'd say I'm at a 10.
Wow. I mean, I know he's had a really bad year this year. I mean, thankfully I just traded him away this offseason, and I couldn't be more happy about that at this point. I don't know if I'm at a full 10, Steve. I mean, I think maybe around an 8 for me. Like you said, the talent is there. I don't understand how Vance Joseph just can't figure out a way to use this guy and figure out a role. Like you said, I mean, at Clemson, he was kind of that jackknife player, that special utility guy who could play everywhere, whether it was safety, linebacker, even kind of rushing the passer. I mean, he should be like, he was kind of hyped up to almost be like what Micah Parsons almost is.
Right.
That ultra utility player that can play over the field. Like you said, maybe a change of scenery helps, but I mean, I don't know if I'm full panicked, but it definitely hasn't looked good this year for sure.
Or a changing coaching staff. I mean, that like the Arizona Cardinals in general are just like, what's going on?
All right. You both brought a player to the table who you are particularly panicked about. Steve, we'll start with you. Who's your guy?
Yeah, so my main panic player is a guy that possibly in your leagues you got pretty frustrated when you woke up at 10 a.m. and realized that he was out for the game. That's running back Alvin Kamara. You know, he has been a reliable fantasy player for the past few years, but I think this rib injury, I think, is really nagging him, which really doesn't bode well for this season. And then on top of that, you got the battery charge that's still over his head, and they're talking about possibly him getting suspended, which I would think is more than likely happening next year and not this year. You know, he's older. He's reaching that shelf life where it's starting to get off. You know, he's losing. He's losing value every day. If he has a really great week, or maybe a great 2 or 3 weeks, and people think he's back, if it were me, I'd be trying to trade him as soon as possible, because I think he's a depreciating player at this point.
Yeah, a player I'm going to talk about is wide receiver Terry McLaurin. I don't know if I'm necessarily panicked about him. I'm kind of on the edge between concern and that. I'm more concerned for Terry McLaurin. One, with Carson Wentz as the quarterback, which has resulted in a lot of inconsistent weeks. The others is the amount of usage that guys like Curtis Samuel and Jahan Dotson is getting. Even though McLaurin does have more targets than Dotson. Dotson has 4 touchdowns on the year, seems to be getting those deep balls, getting more looks in the red zone, even for more opportunities for touchdowns. McLaurin's got a couple weeks here with Jahan Dotson looking to be out 1 or 2 weeks to kind of take advantage of that. But once Dotson comes back and they got the full complement of receivers, I'd keep my eye on Terry McLaurin and see how he does, but I'm a little concerned about him.
Joe, if only Baker Mayfield was his quarterback, then Terry McLaurin's problems would go away.
Oh, yeah, he'd be lighting it up.
I doubt that, Steve. Look at the problems that DJ Moore's still having with those horrible passes out of Baker Mayfield.
He just doesn't know how to get to the ball. You got to be in the mind of Baker.
Oh, please.
You got to just get in sync.
The ball's like 3 yards behind DJ Moore half the time on the routes. I mean,
he should have been 3 yards over.
Oh, no.
That's on DJ Moore. You got to know.
No way, Pete.
Yeah. Baker's sticking to the recipe. You got to hop on board.
He's still got those bad recipes, Pete.
The chicken Pedro.
That's right, Pete.
All right. Who is your player that you are most panicked about? Comment it below. We'll answer you. And if you have any players you want us to talk about, and see if we are panicked or not, comment them below so we can talk about them. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe and hop on board.